Imagine the tranquility of Christmas Eve. The warmth of the fireplace, snow falling outside, the comforting silence of an isolated cabin, shared with those you love. It sounds like the perfect setting for happy memories, right? But what if, upon waking the next morning, that peace was shattered? What if your own body bore inexplicable marks, and your mind held fragments of an indescribable terror, an echo of something that defies our understanding of reality? For one man, the thin line between dream and nightmare, between refuge and the site of an impossible encounter, was irrevocably broken that night. He was a successful author, a master at creating worlds of horror and fiction. But nothing had prepared him for the horror that seemed to emerge from a reality far stranger. Today on Alien Cases, we will unravel the disturbing events that marked the life of Whitley Strieber, a journey that took him from the shadows of doubt and paralyzing fear to a relentless search for answers, confronting memories of blinding lights, enigmatic creatures, and experiences that challenge human logic. Prepare to question the boundaries of our world. The story begins now. Our story takes us to Louis Whitley Strieber, born in 1945 in San Antonio, Texas. Coming from a deeply religious and respected family, with a renowned lawyer father and a maternal lineage connected to the archdiocese's legal affairs, Whitley received a top-notch education, completing his studies in London in 1968. The path seemed set: success in the advertising world in New York City, prominent positions. But another calling beckoned. In 1977, Whitley decided to answer that call. He left advertising to embrace writing, a passion he felt would redefine his existence. By his side, his wife Anne not only supported him, but dove headfirst into the project, taking writing courses to become his personal editor. Whitley's talent quickly blossomed. In 1978, his horror novel The Wolfen, a dark take on urban werewolves, became a huge success, even getting a film adaptation in 1981. He established himself as a strong name in horror fiction, but his restless mind also explored non-fiction. Life seemed to be smiling on the Striebers. In March 1984, seeking an escape from the hustle and bustle of New York, they found the perfect place, a country cabin in upstate New York. Whitley keeps its exact location private, but describes it as a retreat in a small village with scattered houses nestled amidst dense woods. A place of peace, isolation, and above all, safety. Crime was so non-existent that the local police station had only 2 officers. It was there, in that private sanctuary, that the family spent weekends and holidays, recharging away from the city's concrete. Little did they know that this refuge would soon become the epicenter of events that would challenge their sanity and their perception of the universe. October 1985. The cabin hosts a visiting couple, friends of the Striebers. The evening proceeds normally until, in the dead of night, Whitley is awakened by something abnormal. A light. Not an ordinary light, but a blinding glare bathing the room coming from outside. The first thought is pragmatic, urgent. Fire. The roof must be on fire. He leaps out of bed, heart pounding. He rushes downstairs, instinctively checks the stove. Nothing. He heads to the living room, ready to face the blaze outside. But the very instant he steps out the door, the intense light vanishes, suddenly, leaving only the darkness of the night and a silence heavy with questions. What on earth was that? Before Whitley can process the bizarre event, a sound rips through. The silence, the scream of his son, Andrew, then 6 years old, coming from the upstairs bedroom. Fatherly instinct takes over. He bolts up the stairs to find the boy terrified, crying. He spends the rest of the night there, comforting him until sleep finally takes him. The exact reason for the boy's panic remains unclear at that moment. But years later, looking back, Whitley would begin to connect the dots, to suspect that his son on that strange night had also brushed against something profoundly unusual, something he would come to associate with contact of a nature far beyond this world. That incident left invisible scars on Whitley, A sense of vulnerability began to gnaw at him. Fear, once a distant emotion, became a constant companion. He, a city man, bought weapons, a shotgun, a pistol. He installed a full alarm system in the cabin that was once synonymous with peace. Trips to the refuge changed. Nights were interrupted by constant checks on his son's room. The image of the crying boy etched in his mind. He tried to rationalize the light. A rare weather phenomenon? A strange reflection? But logic couldn't quell the growing anxiety, the paranoia that made him feel watched. The idea of selling the cabin emerged, a desire to cut off this source of anguish at the root. But Anne, his wife, intervened. Calmly and persuasively, she convinced him it had been an isolated event, that there was no real reason to abandon the place they both loved. And strangely, despite the fear eating away at him, something kept pulling Whitley back to that isolated cabin. An inexplicable force, an almost magnetic attraction to the very place that now frightened him. While he struggled with this duality, Anne and Andrew enjoyed every visit, unaware of the storm brewing in the family man's mind. The stage was set for the event that would change everything, definitively. December 1985. The Christmas spirit should have filled the cabin, but a silent tension hung in the air, at least for Whitley. The family was gathered to celebrate Christmas. In the early morning hours between December 26th and 27th, the silence was broken again. A loud, abrupt sound jolted Whitley from sleep. He sat up in bed, senses on high alert, and then he saw it. In the dimness of the bedroom doorway, silhouetted against the darkness of the hall, a short figure materialized. Small, motionless. Before he could react, understand what he was seeing, a fog clouded his consciousness. Darkness. Silence. Inexplicably, he fell asleep. Or was he put to sleep? The next morning brought not relief, but an overwhelming sense of exhaustion and panic. It felt as though he had endured the worst night of his life, though he couldn't remember why. Confused fragments haunted his mind, the vivid image of eyes. Large black eyes staring at him in the night. Trying to make sense of it, he mentioned a bizarre theory to Anne. "I think an owl got into the room last night." Her response was immediate and logical. "Impossible, Whitley. The house has no chimney, and all the doors and windows were locked because of the snow." The strangeness didn't end there. Throughout the day, a painful infection developed on his right index finger. He felt disoriented, mentally foggy, his body aching. Anne noticed something else. A small reddish dot, almost like a pinprick, behind his right ear. But the deepest, most disturbing discomfort was a persistent pain in his intestinal region. As days passed, like scattered pieces of a macabre puzzle, memories began to surface. Disconnected flashes. He was in a strange room, surrounded by someone. Someone was examining him. These recollections brought back with full force the disturbance he'd felt after the incident with his son months earlier. The fear, the vulnerability, the feeling that something terrible had happened while he was unconscious. What was all this? Whitley was lost. His personality changed. He became irritable, overly sensitive, even rude to Anne and Andrew, completely out of character for him. Work, his passion, became impossible. Concentration abandoned him. The fear of losing his sanity, of going mad, became palpable. That safe haven now seemed like a portal to the unknown and to his own mental ruin. Desperate for clarity, Whitley decided he could no longer fight whatever haunted him alone. He needed professional help. He made a doctor's appointment. Sitting before the physician, he laid it all out. The fragmented memories, the inexplicable, physical pains, the growing fear of nearing insanity. The doctor, hearing the unusual account, proceeded cautiously. Whitley underwent a full battery of tests, including rigorous psychiatric evaluations. The goal was clear: find a medical or psychological cause for these symptoms and memory lapses. The results, however, only deepened the mystery. Psychiatrically, Whitley was deemed sound. There were no signs of any disorder that could cause hallucinations or delusions. Physically, his general health was good, except for one detail. A shocking and disturbing detail that emerged from the physical exams. Doctors found an internal injury consistent with some form of physical violation or assault. The revelation hit him like a ton of bricks. Without understanding how or when it could have happened, Whitley reached a terrible conclusion. He must have been drugged by someone, and a violent crime had been committed against him that night in the cabin. The idea was horrific, but it seemed the only logical explanation given the physical evidence. Determined, he went to the police station. He wanted to file a report, demand an investigation. After all, there was proven injury. However, to the police in that small, quiet town, the story sounded surreal. With no other evidence, no signs of forced entry at the cabin, no witnesses, just Whitley's confused account, and a medical report mentioning a consistent injury, the case didn't receive the attention he expected. No formal investigation was launched. Whitley was back at square one, now carrying not only the psychological trauma, but the humiliation of an unexplained and ignored physical violation. It was during this troubled period that one of his brothers came to visit, concerned about his state. Whitley opened up, told him about the strange memories, the nightmare-like feeling, the confusion. Listening intently, his brother had an idea. Perhaps the answer didn't lie in conventional medicine or law enforcement. He gave Whitley a book, Science and UFOs by the researcher and ufologist Bud Hopkins. "Read this, Whitley," he said. "Maybe it will help you understand." Initially, Whitley hesitated. He, a writer of fiction, yes, but a staunch skeptic regarding UFOs, aliens, and all that. The idea seemed absurd. But the weeks passed and the anguish didn't subside. The fragmented memories, the unexplained injury, the feeling of having been violated in his own sanctuary, it consumed him. Finally, he opened the book. And what he read left him stunned. The descriptions of experiences lived by others, accounts of abductions, of contacts, were disturbingly similar to the fragments haunting his nights. Still skeptical, but now with a nagging doubt, Whitley made a decision that would change his life forever. He needed to talk to the author of that book. He needed to find Bud Hopkins. On February 6, 1986, Whitley and Ann went to Bud Hopkins' home. It wasn't just a visit. It was a desperate search for meaning. Whitley recounted his memory fragments, the sense of missing time, the light, the figure in the doorway, the marks on his body, the unexplained injury. Although the memories were sparse, Hopkins, a veteran investigator of abduction phenomena, was immediately intrigued. There were patterns there, echoes of other cases he knew well. Hopkins realized the answers. Whitley saw it might be locked away in his subconscious. He referred him to a renowned expert, Dr. Donald Klein, considered at the time the world's leading forensic hypnotist and head of the New York State Psychiatric Institute. If anyone could unlock those repressed memories, it was him. The regressive hypnosis session was a watershed moment. Under Klein's guidance, the barriers in Whitley's mind began to crumble. What were once confusing flashes and vague sensations now returned with terrifying clarity, as if he were reliving every second of that fateful night in December. He remembered the loud sound that woke him. He remembered seeing the figure in the bedroom doorway. But now, the details were sharp. It wasn't an owl. The figure wore something like a smooth, rounded helmet over a disproportionately large head, dominated by huge, black, almond-shaped, lifeless eyes. It wore something like a vest over a tight-fitting suit. As Whitley watched, paralyzed between fear and disbelief, the being began to move towards him. And then, consciousness faded. The next memory was of being outside, lying in a clearing in the woods behind the cabin. The cold of the snow, the scent of the night forest, and the presence of other similar creatures around him. He was conscious, but his body wouldn't respond. Total paralysis except for his eyes, which darted frantically, trying to absorb the surreal scene. Suddenly, an invisible force lifted him off the ground. He floated, watching the treetops pass beneath him, being pulled upward towards something hovering silently above the forest. The feeling was one of absolute powerlessness. The following memory transported him inside a small circular room with a domed ceiling. The environment was cold, metallic. Small humanoid beings moved around him with unnerving speed, almost insect-like. They were short, thin, with grayish skin and the same large, black, penetrating eyes. Panic seized Whitley. He sensed, without a word being spoken, the cold, analytical intelligence of these beings. Some seemed to be monitoring him, observing his reactions, while others prepared to examine him. Lying on a cold surface, he saw another creature approach. This one had something about it that made him identify it as female, though he couldn't explain why. She carried a thin case. Opening it, she revealed a long, shining needle. A telepathic communication, or a terrifying intuitive understanding, informed Whitley of the object's purpose. It would be inserted into his head, towards his brain. Terror gripped him. He fought mentally, trying to force his body to react, to flee. But it was useless. The paralysis was complete. As the needle neared, he heard a loud crack, saw a flash of light, and blacked out again. He awoke in another room, also small, but different. He was still lying down, and the creatures continued their work. This time, he felt instruments being used to collect samples, fecal material, semen. The violation was not just physical, but intimate, degrading. The sense of vulnerability was overwhelming. His only thought was to get out of there, to escape this real nightmare. The entire regression, recorded on video and later made available, revealed not only the shocking details of that night, but also suggested that Whitley had been having strange, fragmented contacts and experiences since age 12, memories that had been completely suppressed until then. The night of December 1985 hadn't been the beginning, but rather the first complete conscious abduction involving invasive examinations. His last memory under hypnosis was waking abruptly in his own bed, in the now questionable safety of his cabin. The circle had closed. The nightmare now had a name, a form, and a sequence of events that, however bizarre, seemed to have actually happened. Emerging from the hypnosis session was like coming out of a dark tunnel into an even more disturbing reality. For Whitley and Anne, the story told under hypnosis, with its wealth of sensory detail and internal consistency, left no doubt. It hadn't been a dream, nor a delusion. It had been real. The discussion about selling the cabin resurfaced, now more forcefully. That place, once a refuge, was now the stage for memories of terror and violation. But Anne, despite everything, still held a special affection for the house, for the location. Perhaps out of stubborn hope, or feeling that running wouldn't help, she again convinced Whitley to stay. She argued that, now that they knew what had happened, perhaps they could understand better. Perhaps it wouldn't happen again. And so, the cabin remained theirs. But the experience had profoundly changed Whitley. Skepticism had given way to a morbid curiosity, almost an obsession. He began spending sleepless nights in the cabin, no longer out of fear, but hoping to re-establish some kind of connection, to understand the purpose behind those encounters. He wanted answers, although he never again reported a direct visual encounter with the gray creatures from the first abduction. Strange events continued to punctuate his stays at the cabin. He described finding inexplicable tracks in the snow around the property, small footprints with toes that seemed fused, unlike any known animal in the region. They were silent signs that perhaps he was still being watched. In the spring of 1986, between March and June, another incident shook the family. They were on vacation. Some sources say at the cabin itself, others don't specify. In the middle of the night, around 3 a.m., Whitley was again awakened by a familiar loud noise. Some versions of the account suggest he glimpsed one of the humanoids in the hallway, but most agree direct contact didn't occur this time. What he felt, unequivocally, was the same wave of paralyzing fear. His first thought, protect Andrew. Ina ran to his son's room, opened the door, and his blood ran cold. The bed was empty. Desperate, he ran outside the house. And there it was. A large, dark object hovered silently above the treetops, and the overwhelming sensation of multiple eyes watching him from the darkness. Panic intensified. They had taken his son, but amidst the terror, A strange feeling, almost a silent instruction, compelled him to go back inside, to the boy's room. Fighting the instinct to stay outside watching the object, he obeyed this internal command. As he touched the doorknob of the room again, he felt a kind of electric shock, a wave of energy coursing through his body. He opened the door, and there was Andrew, sleeping peacefully in bed, as if nothing had happened. Whitley spent the rest of the night awake, his mind racing with unanswered questions. What had happened? Had his son been taken and returned? Was it all an induced hallucination? The next day, Andrew seemed normal, with no apparent memories of the event. The only clue was an enigmatic text he had written, something about stars that caught Whitley's attention. We want to go past the quasars to see what is there. Reality is a divine dream. The boy even asked his father if the eyes in the woods he remembered seeing were a dream. Whitley, unsure what to say, merely reassured him, keeping the terrible suspicion to himself, sharing the anguish only with Anne. The phenomena weren't limited to the night. In July 1986, on Whitley's birthday, while they were at the cabin, everyone felt something bizarre, a physical sensation of energy discharge running through their bodies. Then, the house's electronic appliances went haywire. Lights flickered. Erratically, the radio and TV turned on and off by themselves. It became clear that the presence, or whatever it was, could interact with their environment at any time, in unpredictable ways. And then, in December 1986, almost a year after the main abduction, Whitley reported a new type of contact. Sources are less detailed about this event, but they describe him being suddenly taken from his bed in the cabin to another place. There, he found himself facing a woman. She wore a long blue dress and a white apron. Her appearance was strikingly human, with features he described as Nordic. Fair skin, brown hair, looking to be between 18 and 25 years old. But Whitley felt instinctively that she was not terrestrial. She faced him calmly, holding a thin case. She approached, opened the case, and removed a small metallic object resembling brass. Without warning, she pressed the object against Whitley's neck. Consciousness instantly left him. His next memory was waking up in his bed in the morning. This time there were no marks, pains, or residual sensations. Only the vivid memory of that silent encounter and the woman in blue. This would be, according to him, his last conscious direct contact with unidentified beings. The avalanche of experiences, the abduction, the recovered memories, the persistent echoes at the cabin, the encounter with the woman in blue, compelled Whitley to do what he did best: write. But this time, it wouldn't be fiction. In February 1987, he published Communion: A True Story. The book detailed, with brutal honesty and without sensationalism, his contacts with what he came to call the visitors. The impact was seismic. Communion became an instant bestseller, catapulting Whitley to international fame, but also into the center of a storm of controversy. The book resonated deeply with thousands of people. The cover image, a reconstruction of the face of one of the gray beings based on Whitley's descriptions, became iconic. For many readers, looking into those large black eyes triggered a disturbing sense of familiarity, supposedly bringing repressed memories of their own unexplained experiences to the surface. Communion wasn't just a book. It became a cultural phenomenon, a pivotal reference point in modern UFO literature. But success also brought scorn. To skeptics, Whitley's story was, at best, the product of a suggestible mind or a sleep disorder. At worst, an elaborate hoax by a horror writer looking to exploit a new niche. The revelation of the injury consistent with violation, detailed in the book, became the subject of cruel jokes. Whitley Strieber, the man who claimed to have been intimately examined by extraterrestrials. The last incident reported by Whitley involving a direct observation occurred in January 1988. Again at the cabin, he heard a sound coming from the woods. Drawn to it, he went to investigate. Reaching about 500 feet from the woods, he again felt that oppressive presence, the feeling of being watched. He saw a strange object hovering above the trees, but this time, a primal fear took hold. He sensed a presence not only ahead but also behind him. Overcome by dread, he didn't advance. he turned and ran back to the safety of the house. Interestingly, his wife and some neighbors also reported seeing a UFO in the area on that same occasion, corroborating part of his account. Seeking a larger framework for his experiences, Whitley delved into research. He found parallels between his contacts and theories surrounding the alleged Treaty of Greta, also known as Tall 9, that supposed secret agreement forged in the 1950s between the Eisenhower administration and certain alien races, permitting limited abductions and experiments in exchange for technology. Whitley began to speculate that his experiences might be part of this clandestine program, perhaps monitored by the infamous MAGIC or Majestic 12 organization. An additional layer of intrigue came from his own family. His uncle, Michael Strieber, a former member of the U.S. Air Force, confided in Whitley, after retiring, that he had been directly involved in recovering debris from the Roswell incident in 1947. According to Uncle Michael, what crashed in New Mexico was not a weather balloon, but something unequivocally non-terrestrial, and he had been sworn to secrecy for decades. This family connection only thickened the mystery surrounding Whitley. Ann Strieber stood by her husband, supporting his claims and helping him navigate the media storm until her passing in 2015. Whitley Strieber, today, at the time of this video's production, nearly 80 years old, remains active. He maintains the website Unknown Country, publishing news and articles on ufology and other mysteries, as well as hosting a podcast on the same subjects. He has never wavered in his story. He maintains that his contacts were real, that the visitors are a complex and sometimes terrifying reality. The Whitley Strieber case remains one of the most famous, documented, and debated in global ufology. A story that forces us to confront the limits of the known and to ask, what really happened in that isolated cabin? And what else might be hidden in the shadows of our reality? Whitley Strieber's journey leaves us suspended between fascination and chills. A writer of imagined terrors who found himself the protagonist of a horror far too real, or a complex web of psychological events and misunderstood phenomena. Decades have passed and the questions echo with the same intensity. The truth, as so often in this field, seems to slip through our fingers, leaving us with the weight of the mystery. And you, what resonates with you upon hearing this account? Did you already know the saga of Whitley Strieber and the impact of communion? Is there a detail you believe is crucial that we didn't explore today? We really want to know your perspective down in the comments. Perhaps your theory is the missing piece in this intricate cosmic puzzle. Stories like this remind us of just how vast and unknown the universe, and perhaps our own reality, might be. If you value this exploration of the unexplained, if you feel that investigating these cases is important, please leave a like on this video. It's a simple but powerful signal to YouTube that content like alien cases deserves to be seen by more curious minds. Your support is the fuel that allows us to continue bringing these investigations to you. Together, we can keep uncovering the secrets hidden in the stars and in the shadows of our own world.